By the way, the comment are filtered. Okay, let's wait some second. Hi, Paul. We are on air. How are you?
I'm very good. Very good. Good to be here. Thanks for inviting me.
It's great. So can you tell us, where are you now? Because I saw you the last time a couple of months ago already in Moscow. We hugged each other. We say bye-bye, but so.
Yeah, I'm in Barcelona. We moved together with my family on the 7th of March. We moved for... We didn't know what we were moving in. We knew that we want to start our life in here, and with plans to keep on coming back to Moscow for projects and friends and things like that. But then we kind of caught that curve. So as we came here, things went completely ballistics, and we understood that we have to adapt way more than we thought we should. Just everything that comes psychologically with changing your country, your city, and so on, got that much harsher for us. But I think it's all in all, I think it's a unique and fantastic experience. I keep on thinking like this especially for our children, because this is something. I mean, I really knock on wood. I hope we're not going to be repeating these things regularly, but it's been a fantastic reset for them, because they got used to everything is nearby, everything is accessible, everything, you just click a button, everything happens, and all of a sudden, mini consumers as they are, if you want, they had to brutally understand that from one day to another, they don't have access to the things that are making life comfortable. So yeah, it's weird, because we still, our luggage is still somewhere in Belgium, so we're still living from the clothes that we brought with in our luggage, in our travel luggage. Our things are still traveling because everything happened overnight. Basically, we didn't get the time to register here. Without the registration, they cannot custom clear our stuff. So it's all it's an avalanche of things like this. It really it's been a hard reset for us, in more ways than one.
Yeah, just to give an idea of how and where we met. So it's very, very funny. 7 years ago already passed, Paul, that we know each other, and we met on the basketball court. So it's like the best place ever where to meet people.
Yeah,
I think, and then so understanding, knowing each other, we try to do some project. I just discovered, Paul, as I was telling you, that a picture that we have together was very serious. Like, seems that we are deciding the future of the world, but I think we are discussing, basketball, nothing more, nothing less. During a coffee break in the conference, so we involved a conference lecture at university. So just to say, Paul, I've been living in 15 years in Moscow. Yeah, Paul.
Yeah.
And all this time, Paul was dealing with marketing. So can you give in a snapshot, an overview of your expertise, your life?
Yeah, sure. So it was 15 years in Moscow. I came there with a job offer, as most people do. I didn't know what to expect, and actually at the beginning I was quite protesting against it. I'm a Romanian by birth and passport, so the reputation of Russia at the time inside the country was not exactly stellar. So going to Russia was something very, very exotic, more exotic than going to Asia, for example. Because it was with the communism and everything, all that luggage that we carry in there, the reputation and the way people were perceiving Russia was like, what would you need there? But I was constantly surprised. So I started being surprised from the day I got there. Of course, I got surprised. It was a January, and it was super cold. It was like minus 30 degrees, and I thought that I'm physically not built for that temperature. And we were making jokes with my wife. that it's a nice place, but I don't know how we're going to make it with that cold. But then we started to meet people, and the people have constantly been a mega beautiful surprise. Got lots of friends in Russia that we collected throughout these years, not just in basketball, but work and everything. And I simply love that. So I came for the job, but I stayed for the people in a way, as they say. So I came to as a regional director for DDB, the advertising agency. I was running then the McDonald's account across Russia and the CIS, and then like in a few months it became Eastern Europe as well. So we were doing a lot of coordinated activities for them. We were in charge of their helping them with the planning and development of their communication bits, advertising, and so on. And then that role evolved into the role of the COO of the agency, which is basically the day-to-day management of the operation. And I've done that for some more years in there until I got to a point where I was a bit desperate because the advertising business, as you probably know, is undergoing a bit of a crisis of identity. Things are changing a lot in the life of consumers, in the life of businesses, and then the advertising business is kind of stubborn like a mule that doesn't want to change and adapt. And therefore, I was a little bit, I felt that there's no growth. There's no more personal growth in there. I felt that I've done it all several times, and what the hell am I doing? I didn't feel the motivation in the morning. So I decided to look for different opportunities, and then that's how I've been the chief marketing officer of Utkanos for almost like 2 years, which was, it's a Russian company, so it's been a different experience from that point of view, but then a very challenging one in terms of, where to position that business and how to kind of, have all these little facets of an e-grocery player kind of work well together. And then after that, I was looking for something to kind of, you got the adrenaline. I wanted more of that. And it's very difficult to find that sort of an adrenaline and sense of accomplishment in a typical legacy company. And so therefore I started to consult companies because that was more motivating for me, and I thought I add more value to companies because it's, you're in there when they actually need you, but not for the down periods when there's not so many big things to decide or do, problems to solve, or there's enough staff and smart people in there to do it. And I found consulting to be a very interesting territory for me personally, and I probably will be doing this ongoing as we move forward. It feels very motivating, but also I feel that it's genuinely more condensed added value to businesses. And the main idea of that consulting really comes from two places. One is ensuring consumer centrism, so really understanding consumers, putting that understanding of consumers at the heart of a business. And then the second thing is about having the flexibility, the speed to adapt, to try to experiment and have this sort of a mindset of trying new things, poking into what the future could offer you.
Yeah, because I've got a few questions, no? to make it more interesting also for our listener who is watching now live. So the main idea, the main picture that people that is not connected with the marketing is the idea that we have got through this let me say serial, no, Mad Men, this Fight Club within a marketing agency. But of course, in the real life, I think that marketing is something different. Can you? And we have the pleasure, the opportunity to have you here today, that you more or less covered all the possible position, no? And you saw the transition from the old version of marketing, let me say, from billboard to the internet world, no?
Yeah.
How change in the specific the marketing world in the Western country and in the Eastern country? So you came in the period that Russia was still, let me say, in a technological transition
Yeah.
toward the post-Soviet era. Can you just?
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, it's, we're not going to have time to kind of go super in depth,
No,
for
I
sure.
mean, like a snapshot
But
on
yeah, in
this
a
point.
in a nutshell, I think there are a couple of things to talk about. And I always start, with the consumer. So if you look in a market like Russia, consumers are relatively a new generation. It all started in the early 90s when consumption in the Western terms started to establish itself bit by bit. So therefore, consumers of our age would be having a little bit of a legacy from their previous period when they were not consumers in the current sense. So I sometimes was doing this parallel of with a person who learns a new language. You might be fluent in it, but you're still having a little bit of a, there's something you go like, did I say that right? Is that did that come across the right way? So there's always been a bit of a hesitation. Um, so I think that's been there, and I think it's important and I think we'll park a little bit Russia with this idea that consumerism was a new thing, a new behavior for all the people. Yeah. When you look at the Western markets, I think marketing has been. Um, I think historically it took time to kind of grow to become an established discipline within businesses, and even today it doesn't have. It suffers from a little bit of a kind of, we're not very sure of ourselves as a profession. So if you talk to finance directors or HR directors, they know exactly what they're doing, and nobody's doubting that. For some reason, marketeers, by and large, they go, well, they always have to over justify what they're doing and so on. So in a sense,
Why they're spending money? Why they're spending the money? Yeah.
And the fact that they're spenders and not earners, in the first place, has had something to do with that. The fact that psychologically only in the recent time we start to understand how people are making decisions, mainly that it's irrational and not rational. So the old ways of thinking economics as people are super rational beings that make calculations and then like computers get the right result every time, that's completely doesn't work in real life. And there's people like Damasio and Daniel Kahn and so on and so on, these people who have come up with the theory is that now we have, I think there's a large body of literature and proof and tests and things like that are basically showing that people are by and large irrational. So you have to deal with that stuff. But so that has affected very much the way marketing is positioned within companies. But I think if you think about it in a nutshell, marketing is about connecting what the capabilities of the companies are with what the needs of consumers are. Yeah, so making that relevant connection between the two. Typically, we do that through what we call a value proposition. Yeah, so it's like the consumer has to find something valuable in what you as a company are producing, so answering their needs. Historically, that equation has been the other way around. So it was like the company would have the instinct to produce something, and then they would go to their sales and marketing people and go like, go sell it. Yeah. What's happening nowadays, things are changing gradually and also rapidly. That there's so many things existing in the marketplace, it's very difficult to go through that silly cycle nowadays that we produced a mass of things and then, well, let's figure out how to sell those. Yeah, so it's changing that cycle in the sense that you have to understand the consumer needs, what they need, what they want, what they're starting to want. And this is something that we will be talking about when we talk about trends in COVID-19 and all that stuff, because things are changing fast, and you have to be aware of what people are going through. You can't just close your eyes and try to sell things. That's just not going to work. So what I said about the Western marketing, I think it's been kind of a linear growth until the era of the internet that has disrupted everything. and has constantly been putting pressure on marketeers, but like on every aspect of the economy and life in general. I think we're far more connected today. We have access to far more information. We demand far more information, and so on, while still, being completely irrational about the way we make decisions. So it's a very different environment in which we as individuals operate, and also in which companies are operating. And the role of marketing has had to transform to take all that into account. There's a plethora of channels of communication. There's a plethora of channels of distribution.
So,
For
Paul, not to
yeah,
interrupt you, but you see from your point of view that internet um, put up the challenge for the marketing department, for the market, so make it easier, because frankly speaking, no, my new passion for neuropolitics, and of course I came across
yeah,
neuromarketing and all these techniques you mentioned before, Antonio Damasio, no, the one of the first that discovered the connection between brain and decision making, and also
yeah.
marketing and so on. We will discuss very soon about it. But the interesting thing is that I see from the seller's point of view that the internet maybe gave an end, so was an additional instrument to sell better the products. But from your idea, I don't know, maybe I'm mistaken. I perceive that from your point of view, from your work, internet creates more a problem.
No, I think it's like with everything. It's both. It's an opportunity if you look at it this way, because you can be closer to your consumers,
Yeah,
to your peers, to understand the trends and all that stuff, and so on and so on. But by the same token, you have to manage it. Yeah, and most companies didn't have the personnel, they didn't have the instruments, they didn't have the mindset. How the hell to manage this? And it's actually in the history of the communication channel, you see a lot of this, legacy carries on to the new medium. So typically, when television was invented, people were basically doing radio with a picture, yeah, because they didn't know how to do better.
yeah,
And when the internet appeared, people were treating it like a combination of TV and billboard, because that's what they knew. Until they start to kind of poke holes into it and start to see what where they can go with it. And I've seen last year, I think the guys from FE, you're familiar with FE? This is a global organization that's basically rewarding, judging and rewarding
the
efficiency in
marketing.
marketing communication.
Yeah, of course.
So they exist for about 50 years. So they had this brilliant marketeer, Mark Ritson, who's he has hosted a number of he's been evaluating the FEs and the kind of the learnings to be extracted over the years from what works and what doesn't work. And it was a very interesting bit in this. He's picked like 10 or 9 big campaigns to talk about what has worked in there. So like I really advise any marketeer worth their salt to check that out, or even youngcomers and so on. It's very entertaining, and it's kind of have this kind of packaged knowledge that you can take with you and go and run. And one of the things that he was noticing is that also as a side effect, what people are doing, internet has appeared, and all the mobile phones and the interactivity that came with the smartphones and so on. Of course, the first generation of doomsayers appeared. Television is dead. Marketing as we know it is dead. Da 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 da. Everything is dead. That never happens historically. Typically, what happens is the new channels, the new instruments are squeezing in, making everything becomes just a bit more diversified in there, and that adds to the complexity in front of a marketeer to stay kind of curious and be able to test things, because you don't know exactly what's the best way to mix these channels. What is the roles that you want to have for the different channels of interaction and communication and sales with your consumers? How do you make the right choices in there? You can only do it through a certain level of experimentation. And if anybody says otherwise, it's kind of silly, because it's shifting sands. Everything moves all the time. So what you knew until last year, it's not necessarily factual and correct for the next year. So it's this mindset of you need to study the beast. There's new things coming. You need to experiment with them and see where do they fit to your brand personality, to your organization, to the type of consumers that you have, to the needs of your consumers, etc., and find a role, but don't set that role, don't carve it in stone, because things are changing. So in a year, go back and say, okay, we thought this is going to be this. Does it still is this still valid, or do we need to kind of challenge our thinking and brush it up?
From your point of view, and like based on what you were telling now, so do you see that this crisis, this pandemic crisis, is more both an opportunity and a challenge for companies during the period? I mean, let's concentrate like in these 2 months, that everything's more or less shut down. So, but certain companies still to sell, and that's to send a message. Because, by the way, as I'm learning as I learned through my studies, neuroscientific studies and so on. So, more or less, you create a story. So you don't connect people to a brand, but you connect them to a story that you want to tell them. But you are an expert on this. Yeah. So what the story to tell now to people during this crisis?
Well, I think there's been, I was reading yesterday, there was a McKinsey report out about how they advise companies to do moving forward. And they talk about, already starting to plan the next stage. We, LHBS, we had a report issued earlier this week, and we talk about the new normal. So there will be a new normal coming. And we didn't understand that from the very beginning. We do now, because things have accelerated very fast and everybody had to adjust. I think companies, what I've seen, they've gone through certain stages, and it's the same stages with every psychological trauma. You go through the grief, and then you kind of start to cope with it, and then eventually you start to see opportunities in disguise. Of course, most companies had to deal with first, the entire staff working from home, and you have to set the basic level of functionality in there and adjusting mentally that meetings are now through Zoom and so on. So that took some time. Then you have to start to prioritize things. What's important to do and what not. Most companies would probably have looked at their portfolio and understand, okay, we should shift focus on this and this and this because this is still sellable, it still works, and we need to kind of look at our supply chain, make sure that our ecosystem kind of works, and our people, and so on and so on and so on. And so you have to reprioritize depending on how things are developing in your particular sector of the economy and so on. But then I think what's happening now is slowly everybody's starting to kind of move their horizon from a day-to-day crisis operation to, okay, so we see at the horizon, the de-escalation of the quarantine. So, okay, what's that going to mean? What's that going to change? Start to have some sort of an emerging map of the actions that the company needs to take to prosper and deal with things. And the storytelling is very important in here because it does connect you with consumers. And there's a very long learned idea that in times of crisis, this is also an opportunity for companies that are genuinely having a good purpose, besides selling and making a profit, that are coming from an idea of doing something good, playing a good role in people's lives. This is a good opportunity to demonstrate that. But by the same token, and this was also, I think there are various pieces of research that are demonstrating this, people are also hating when companies take advantage of a crisis.
Yeah, of course.
So you need to find that sort of a balance where, you talk in your own, what is genuinely yours in your own territory, but without overdoing it, without turning it into an overt commercial and sales kind of pitch. So there's
just to interrupt you. According to my studies, I'm not a marketing expert, but I was trying to to send a message to friends that have small businesses, for example, selling goods. No, like they have shops and now they are closed and they try to sell goods, and they try to attract clients, selling goods, just promoting them through discounts. And I was telling them, people will not come to buy you, or even if you will deliver, will not be interested to buy, I don't know, a jeans, a shirt, a blazer, or even a pair of socks. If you're offering them 50% of discount, these things, you have to change the message that you're going to provide, to deliver to your customer. Maybe you don't focus. I understand that you have to sell, but maybe you change the message. You offer an hope, and they will say like, yes, but we, that old-fashioned like sellers. No, they say no, but I need to show them that I'm close to them, that I'm trying to sell them. Giving them a favor. No, the favor is the customer that's doing to you. So it's the opposite. A customer is doing you a favor to buy the things. So what is your, can you give an advice, let me say, or from your point of view, a strategy, because big companies, I saw that they shift. They make a new campaign, wonderful campaign, stopping to send a message of selling, but sending a message of hope. No, and I think that this storytelling, as we were telling before, is creating a legacy for the future. Yeah. So from my point of view and my knowledge, but you can say better. But still, the old fashion shops, the old fashion seller, they are trying to use the old message yet, despite the old message already wasn't working before, and of course during a crisis with a lockdown will never work.
Yeah, well, I think it's very difficult to give a general advice because every situation is, in every context and every relationship between a potential customer and a business is slightly different. But I think it all starts with a value proposition. Value proposition being defined as, what can I give you as a company, as a producer or seller? What can I offer you to answer your needs? And your needs being defined as both practical, concrete, benefits. I want a paper towel that absorbs water. I want that. But also I want something that responds to my emotional needs, where I need to be a little bit pampered and so on. Now, I'll give you an example that I've seen quite often in the world of restaurants, because restaurants have suffered immediately after the quarantine because they had to close.
Yeah.
I mean, some of them started to operate as, online delivery and so on. And it was interesting because as online delivery, I mean, what can you do in there? People are really counting all their money. So this feels like a luxurious proposition. But what I've seen very interesting, I think it was this was coming from my native Romania. They started to go to appeal to the sense of community. And the idea was that, if you go to a restaurant around the place where you live, you're part of a certain community. And basically they started to appeal to people to say, contribute to us, keep us afloat, so we can be there when things come back. Yeah. And this is already, it's not a transactional proposition, it's something emotional, because you start to go, if all the restaurants in the area where I live are going to shut down, what the hell am I going to hope for when things. So all of a sudden, and this is really coming, it's a very insightful thing, because we all think this way. We think, okay, what's going to happen to the hairdresser, what's going to happen to all these little mom and pop shops around the places where we live. So this, and people are looking for ways to reach out to these businesses, but physically they can't do it. So you see, there's an answer to, I have these needs, and these guys are offering not just the food that I can put on my table, great, and I know it because this is the restaurants where I used to go, but I also contribute positively to their life.
A message for the future.
Yeah.
Current need from both sides, but also a message for the future. So if you support me today, so tomorrow we will be still together. So you will have.
So it becomes an act of kindness. Yeah.
I like it. This advertisement. It's not advertisement, but policy that Papa John's in Russia. I think that you saw. I post, no. He's selling pizza. He's selling with 30% of discount if you have a coupon, like an electronic discount, and added one section. The section is called Joy, and is selling condoms. So I think that this is a message. You stay at home, you enjoy pizza,
Yeah.
you enjoy your life. I mean, it's can be funny, but it's a genius from your point of view. I mean, I'm giving you, let me say, the need that you have to. I'm delivering, a message. Feed yourself. I'm feeding yourself, and then like enjoy your life. I mean, take the opportunity to enjoy your life.
Yeah.
So it's,
But
I
I
mean,
wanted to say something else, Vince, that, besides these bits of communication, I think we are seeing, and we will be seeing more and more businesses who will understand that it's not just about the way you talk, but actually do things. Yeah. So
yeah,
so change your product line or your services or the way you're doing things through your digital channels, for example, in a way that makes it much easier for people. And this only happens, and you start to see brands that see this because they understand what people are going through. The classic example would be IKEA. Through their app, you can actually, because there's a big focus coming now towards home. We all spend more time at home, so of course home improvement is becoming a big thing for everybody, because you notice things and you want to increase the comfort of being there because you
yeah,
spend
of
there
course.
24/7. Yeah. And IKEA is an example where they, in some markets, they have this virtual reality app that you can juxtapose on your the reality of your flat or house, what have you. And then you can put the different bits of furniture or whatever you have, so you see them proportionally in context, so you can make a decision without having to go to the store. And what I find very interesting about that example is this is not about communication. This is about actually doing something to help you accomplish your mission as a buyer. You want a new armchair, but you have no idea what's going to fit. Okay, we
Yeah,
give you the tools for that.
where to put it.
But what's very interesting also about this is it's designed to work well now in crisis because we're stuck at home. But this is a typical example of a thing that's going to stick. Why would I go through the madness of an IKEA store if it's not for the meatballs? If I can make those decisions from home. So it's like, and this is actually a trend that we see a lot of people talk about, that some of the new behaviors that we're acquiring nowadays will stick to us. A lot of the e-commerce growth that we see in a lot of markets, it's going to stick because people have overcome the barrier of, okay, so I'm paying for this. Am I going to see the results? Or do I go through the customer acquisition process, which sometimes is difficult, but we're done with that. So therefore, you're going to repeat those things rather than going back to the old habits.
Do you see for the future, for the new normal, an increase of virtual activities, or we'll also see uh, like coming back on the reality? Because people will be more on the street. I think. After 2 months of lockdown, people will be on the street. I had a podcast with a guy, very interesting guy, creating an emotional experience in a museum, but even he won a prize for IKEA in Poland and so on. He's an Italian guy, and I think that now you will have, as a company, as marketing department, to create also storytelling and emotion like contact, emotional experience on the streets, because people will be tired to look at things on internet. We'll have also the joy, to go on the street and get the street emotion back.
I think it's going to be a mix of things, to be honest, because yes, there will be this effusion, this desire to get out there and run and go nuts and so on. But by the same token, let's not forget that economies are going to be hit hard everywhere around the world,
Yeah,
which
sure.
means that the disposable income of individuals will take it's already taking and will continue to take dramatic hits in there. So people will be, this is why the value propositions, in the sense the value for money, are becoming so much popular. So people are downshifting from more premium brands to something that kind of just does the job, and it's just okay and so on. And you see that trend coming everywhere after any crisis, but in particular after this one, it's going to be a big one. So I think that's going to be a mixture of things, because what do you have at play? First, you have the home as a physical space that we are all now improving, because we're sitting here and we notice things, we fix things, we improve it by being there. Then there's the familiarity of being in this place. You become more, the new inertia. Well, this is where we live, this is our place. Then you're going to have financial difficulties that are basically going to stop you to go out there and spend all your money and so on. You're going to be very accurate and kind of precise with the way you spend every euro, ruble, or dollar. Yeah. So therefore, I think people will be very, very picky. Moreover, there's another trend about, people are becoming very creative about, how they use their resources, and that means access to things online and so on. I mean, you probably had the same. We had a couple of parties with friends on Zoom. Yeah. So we were drinking and so on. Honestly, I can see those repeating when the crisis is over, because we live in different countries. We're going to do that, and we're going to continue to do that. Yeah. And that's a very interesting thing, because we don't do it maybe now because we're not going to have enough money in our pockets, but it's not going to hurt us that we're going to spend the evening with our friends at home and drinking wine from the bottle that we bought from the shop, rather than going to the restaurant. Yeah. So there's a complex mixture of things that our portfolio of choices as individuals, I think, will be radically different. This is why I think it's a good title to call this the new normal, because it's going to be really different. So anybody who's expecting things to be returning to what we had a month or 2 months ago, that's just naive, I think.
Yeah, I think is let me say, not naive, but even stupid, because we have to be prepared for the next one. I'm keep repeating that I don't think that this will be first and last, no, in this century. So there are other challenges similar maybe to this one that are waiting behind the corner. So we have to be ready, and I think an implementation of let me say what you were telling, no, maybe a pub or a restaurant we decided to move, yes, so from offline, no, experience to the online experience.
Yeah.
Especially big chains, no. So I mean that big franchising, because yeah, we had they used not to go out when you were in Moscow to have a drink and so on, but now we are separate. Why to don't create that experience but branded? I mean, yeah, it's a good idea. So I think that the new normal will help, but also I think that several, even IKEA, I think will change because you mentioned will change the approach. I think that will work more on the reuse of items that was selling, no, because and will help people.
Yeah, and I think that this is the other thing. I mean, if you look at the fundamental values, and whomever I've been talking to, friends, relatives, and so on, over the past month or two, everybody seems to be going through a complete reevaluation of what they stand for as individuals and families. Yeah. Often you find that you're cluttered with things. Yeah, we've been buying tons and tons of things that carry no value. So all of a sudden they're exposed like the emperor without clothes. Yeah, we look at them. I brought with me 4 shirts. I was wearing. I was wearing one. And on an occasion where we created a special dinner in the family and we wanted to dress up just to feel normal, and then another one for Easter. Yeah. And that's fine, because the other 2 are sitting there nicely in the cupboard. But I have another, I don't know, 50 shirts in my luggage coming somewhere in my stuff. I don't really need all that. Yeah, it's like one of those things that you go like, you really start to reevaluate. And I'm giving the silly example that's very materialistic, but I think we're examining every corner of our lives, and we go deeper into the relationships that are meaningful for us. And the roles that we play with families and things like that. I think we're all going through that. for two reasons. We're isolated from all these experiences that we have, and also we have time on our hands. So we start to reflect. We start to put things into a different perspective. And this is why I think that the period we're crossing right now is really unique, because it's basically, it's a hiatus. It's like we took a break from life as usual. When the hell do we have the chance to do that? Yeah.
And of course, maybe we are going to reduce the distances in terms of relationship.
Yeah, but there's also a very interesting thing, and I've noticed that, because I'm gone from my homeland, from Romania, for over 20 years. Yeah, so I lived away from my parents, my brother, and so on for a long time. And we noticed even 10 years ago that I was closer to my parents via Skype than they were with my brother, and they were literally living door to door. Yeah. So sometimes the physical distance is actually a much bigger emotional distance, because you take things for granted. You go like, yeah, they're just here, they're next door. Whereas from a distance, you actually make more effort, and you're trying to kind of recreate that context that you're missing, and therefore you might end up being closer.
But also you are more emotionally involved, because you know that you can't be there. So I think that you are more emotionally involved.
Yeah.
Is my example. I feel, as I was telling, I think the other day, so my sister got ill with this virus. So I felt more emotionally involved, maybe staying here than being in my hometown, and maybe be more practical there. So, but the distance, yes, created this reaction, I think. But I think that you will think twice to be far from your kids, no, in the future. So I mean, this will reduce the distance from the people that share with us the emotions of this time.
Yeah, and I think I mean, this is also another thing that we call it nesting. Yeah, so people have this sort of a idea of kind of sticking together, and it starts with the first circle of the immediate family or partners or whomever we have in our lives, and then it extends to the next circle of close friends, and so on and so on. So I think the need that we all have is to hug those people who are extremely valuable and whom we love dearly, even more often, and maybe stronger than usually. And I don't think this is going to go away very fast. But I think the opposite of that, everybody's joking that this is going to be a period that's going to generate a lot of divorces and scandals in the families. And I can totally see that happening. Yeah, because it's if two people don't really understand each other well, imagine being 24/7 locked in there with no escape. That's a that's a cooking pressure cooking and calling for trouble. Sure. So I think what's happening in this time is like a lot of these things are almost like all have like this giant microscope, with the help of which we're examining all these things that maybe are not as obvious on a day-to-day in normality. Yeah. So yeah.
Some lovely message from our Filipino friends gang from the basket. So still, you see, community being far is still strong. Paul, I want to thank you for this interesting overview. Of course, I think that in the future we could analyze. I think after the lockdown, it would be very interesting to analyze how we close this experience, and what we really our future is what is waiting for us. So thank you so much. It was very,
thank you for having
interesting. Me. Yeah, and I would like to tell to the guys that are listening and who will listen later on, that would be possible also to get an audio version from the usual platform that have in the podcast. So thank you, Paul, and thank you everybody for your time, and enjoy.
Thank you. Keep safe, be well, and see you around.